Joe, I love the idea of two septuagenarians.
Welcome to CNN Talk. Just to warn you, we are on Facebook. Hey, Bonnie.
Yeah.
Trump launches re-election campaign. What are his biggest obstacles, apart from Bonnie Greer? Apart from you, what are his biggest obstacles?
Himself.
There are two obstacles, himself and Bonnie Greer.
And him. Is Donald J. Trump is his obstacle.
We'll talk a bit about the various elements that have sort of developed. I mean, but in terms of this polling story, it's interesting. His own pollsters being fired by his team after they showed some negative results.
If you said, Siri, give me a Trump story that epitomises the man, it would be firing the messenger for bringing him bad news. It's like something out of Shakespeare or something like a dictator would do. Cleopatra does it in Antony and Cleopatra.
It's gorgeous.
I don't want that news. Go away and come back when you can bring me some proper news. But he is here, arguably, as president because of the power of assertion, the power of saying over and over things, whether they're true or not, until enough people believe them. That's how Trump has got where he's got to.
I don't know if they believe so much. You know, you just kind of give in a way. I don't know about the belief.
They voted for it. My point is that he kind of ran a pitch, didn't he, which was to say things irrespective of their truth, and enough people followed.
Well, remember that line in The Godfather where the consigliere says, I don't like taking bad news back to So this is it.
But this is the way that dictators and the line between dictatorship and phenomenally successful leadership can be quite thin. And one person's dictator is another one's very successful, strong, charismatic leader. And a lot of politics is down to interpretation of the facts. You know, what I see may be what you see something different. Of course, it's in your interest to make it plain that this guy's a liar. But the reality is he sees things differently and he's got information and knowledge that you and I may not be privy to, is the way that he would put it.
So they say.
So they say. And enough people in politics, in a democratic two-party system, you only need to get a group of people prepared to not vote against you, and you're home and host.
But George, let's go even further because you're the expert on this. You know that we're talking about human inertia. We're talking about human herd instinct. If you look big, bad, and bold enough, you get a crowd because that's how we are. We are herd animals. Sure. We go with the loudest bull in the pack. And here is Donald Trump, who's done his whole career from the moment he started doing real estate with his dad in the 70s. That is what he's done.
He's power of assertion.
And I think what our job is to take that apart because it's very important to do. It's very important to keep talking. It's very important with networks like CNN, keep talking about this because it keeps people conscious because you can lose consciousness. That's part of what Trump does. Trump causes people to lose consciousness.
And one thing that's absolutely true of him is because he's been doing it for so long now, in the absolute sort of eye of the storm, people have become inured to it.
Absolutely.
And it's not a shock anymore.
Yes.
And we've sort of rolled over and accepted this is the way that he is. And that's a danger for the Democrats because you've got to find a way of making it seem like he is shocking you.
He's the president of Bull.
Well, but you know, the Democrats, I mean, to talk about them, all they want to do, their base just wants to beat Trump. They're not interested in the Green New Deal. They're really not interested in any of that. They want this guy out of the White House. So whoever can do that, they will get behind. And Trump and Trump knows that. Trump knows that better than anybody. That's why he's panicking.
But a huge irony is the Democrats would normally see themselves as positioned to support the working poor in America. And actually, the economy has never been so strong. People are doing well.
Well, on paper, but then why would he give farmers welfare to people in Iowa? I mean, these tariffs are freaking people out. People are going to get jobs, but we don't know what jobs they're taking. I mean, that's the other thing.
Well, also, I think one of the modernity's biggest problem at the minute is that high employment hasn't led to uniform wealth.
Thank you.
And people believe,
and you have to ask the question why there is. Yes, you have to ask that question.
And so you can say, we've got a strong economy, look how high employment is, and people say, well, I don't feel it. I
don't feel it.
Can Trump sustain that argument, seems to me?
Trump keeps pumping billions into Iowa because of the corn. I've written about that. And people are saying, okay, for a moment, but those people aren't stupid. And also, those farmers are very proud people. Yeah. They want to sell their stuff. They don't want welfare. And that's what Trump is giving it. And now he's hit the wall with them because they are actually Obama Democrats, they gave him a chance. They don't have anywhere to go yet.
Welcome to CNN Talk. We're talking about Donald Trump's re-election campaign. It's coming very soon. What are his biggest obstacles?
Donald Trump officially launches his re-election campaign Tuesday night.
Is there any place that's more fun than a Trump rally?
But before he heads off to Orlando, he has to deal with tension among the ranks of both his campaign staffers and in the West Wing as well.
Slamming his own campaign's polls that show him losing to former Vice President Joe Biden and other Democrats.
Can you imagine Sleepy Joe, Crazy Bernie?
But even your own polls show you're behind right now, don't they?
No, my polls show that I'm winning everywhere.
But then he fired 3 of his pollsters.
Privately, a person familiar with the situation told CNN that the dismissals and firings were less to do with the quality of the pollsters' work than about pacifying the president.
The president found himself out of the loop on a major U.S. strategy to counter Russian cyber attacks.
Because of concerns he may shut it down or share the information with Russia.
It isn't the sort of news President Trump wanted heading into his official re-election campaign rally.
I don't know, how the hell do you lose this election, right?
We are still awaiting the Trump fans on our Facebook feed. Pramod said the biggest obstacle is Trump himself. Lorraine says his biggest obstacle is himself and his Twitter feed. And Oshay Nusu says his Twitter library is his biggest obstacle.
I'm not sure.
That's not true, is it? Let's be honest. This guy won the keys to the White House 3 years ago by speaking directly to his base. That's how he does it. That's the success. He's a phenomenal modern communicator.
He's also at his happiest now. The other thing is that, he doesn't like governing, you would imagine. He doesn't like working hard. He doesn't like all the
bored, stiff, could care less.
He has his most fun. He's right. He's like, when he's not sitting watching telly, the place he'd like to be, other than the golf course, is at a rally with people shouting his name.
And you're right. And the reason, he's got this economy. We're all talking about the economy. Trump doesn't talk about it because he's already told us it's boring. It bores him. He's told his own base, isn't this boring, these numbers? They go, yeah. Okay, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about Hillary Clinton. Oh, Hillary Clinton again? So Trump travels in what I call the Trump archipelago. That is Florida, which has become Trump country, Iowa, Pennsylvania. He goes to these handful of states. He gets people to sort of come out. He travels nowhere else. He goes nowhere else. And now the polls are biting him in the behind because that's what's going down.
These are the top lines from the leaked internal polls from the Trump campaign. And they angered Donald Trump. We're going to bring them up there. Biden leads in Pennsylvania, 55 to 39. Biden leads Wisconsin. Yeah. Florida, crucially, and also by 2 points in Texas. What does that mean, Bob?
These are ancient. These are ancient polls. They're sort of 3 months old.
They're ancient, and you're right, because these polls don't matter, but they matter to Donnie, and that's why he's freaking out. No, it really, that's not the kind of polls he expects to see. He reads only one poll, which is Rasmussen. He reads nothing else. All the aggregates have never gotten above 45%. Ever.
And also the midterms, if you look at the places he did poorly in the midterms, they were the places he needed to do well. He did well in the last election and would need to do well in another election. So it is not, there is a body of evidence that you would suggest that although the incumbent tends to do well, although he has the power of inertia, he has the power to stump around America shouting, he'll certainly do that for the next year or so. There are points suggesting he has got to do something in those battleground states that he hasn't done in the last couple of years because they're wobbling.
Let's just hear from him because he denies that there are polls showing behind.
Well, believe him.
We do believe it. We believe him.
But even your own polls show you're behind right now, don't they?
No, my polls show that I'm winning everywhere.
I don't know. We've all seen these reports that with 15 out of 17 states, you spent $2 million on a poll and you're behind in 15 out of 17 states.
Nobody showed you those polls because those polls don't exist, George.
So they exist, George? Well, they're ancient, so they're relevant.
This is Stig and I were talking earlier on about the power of assertion. And we are now in an age where strong leaders can just assert that a thing is not a fact. And that, for people like us around this table and many of our viewers, will be quite a disturbing thought that it's actually successful. Just out and out refuting that poll exists is pretty powerful.
It's called
because
gaslighting.
We haven't got it here.
Gaslighting.
That's exactly right. However, the reality is the polling is a little bit out of date. There's no question about that. We haven't seen this guy beginning his campaigning. The campaigning begins tonight.
He could have just said that, though, couldn't he?
He could have done, but he is in the business of assertion. That's what has got him a very long way. The second thing to point out is, as you say, normally the incumbents in American history win. The third thing is, the economy is doing well. The fourth thing is, don't forget that it looks slightly odd for the Democrats to have to move to the left at a time when actually the economy is doing okay.
But they're not doing that. See, that's the thing I want to put on the table. First of all, we know we're talking about a black swan. Trump is a black swan. And even though the data had a little tiny pockets in 2016 that showed he could possibly win, everybody heard it and nobody believed it, okay? But Trump is a black swan. We don't actually know what's going to happen. But if we look at tradition, we look at the polls that he's got, you don't get reelected under 45%. I don't care who you are. Okay, so that he knows that. He's been told it. He doesn't like it. And also what happened in the House, which is really scary for the Republicans, the real ones, not the Trumplicans, but the Republicans, they got wiped out. And this hasn't happened since 1970s or something. That's scary stuff. Now, the Democrats and why Nancy Pelosi is a genius and he hates her is actually Nancy Pelosi has said, look, let's just do our agenda. Let's do our agenda. That's what we got elected for. Let's deliver an agenda. Impeaching Donald Trump gets nowhere because Donald Trump will not be taken out of office.
You need to bring forward a candidate who can take on Trump. And it's all very well saying all that, which is...
But it happened.
There are 20 candidates.
Biden...
Who's not?
Okay, look.
Imagine being a Democrat and not putting your name together. It's a mission of failure.
I love that. I wish I could even be eligible. There's 5 of these people I love. But Biden scares the heck out of him, and there's a reason why. Biden knows it too. Even though I don't know if Biden's actually going to make it all the way through the campaign, who knows? But he's scared of Joe because Joe talks to the people he talks to. And the people he talks to, and I'm from this part of the country, Donald Trump is a Queens real estate dealer who came down a golden stairway in Manhattan, and that's how he's seen in Iowa. They like him, but they know where he came from. They're not fooled at all.
Joe Biden's one of the candidates that he's nicknamed, which often shows he's slightly under threat from him. Some would suggest. Let's hear from Joe, and you can respond. Joe.
And we got to stop letting these guys use the divisions that exist in the country as a means, like charlatans always do, to divide the country. Well, the reason why that black man doesn't have a job in your county is because of that white immigrant coming across the border here, or that Hispanic, or that Muslim, or whatever. It's used by charlatans all the time. And we have a guy in the White House who's turned it into an art form. It has to end. It has to end. The division has to end.
He's not using assertion, though, is he, there? He's responding to Trump, which is what Trump always manages to get out of his opponents.
Trump has created the political gravity in America unquestionably. Everything is about... He does it with the media, Not only does he do these tweets to bypass the media, they're then refracted through the media as the media reacts to things he's said about them. That's his great genius, if you want to call it something. He sucks every attention to him. Now, Biden might well want to define himself in opposition to Trump. And that may be enough, but that, to me, was not particularly inspiring. Okay. This is going to be 2 septuagenarian men, potentially, fighting about the future of a country at a time when there's all sorts of pressing things.
Yeah, but
we have the issue of climate change looming. We end up with 2 70-odd-year-old men fighting
I know
the
old
last
people
war.
scare you, Stig, but let me just say this. No, listen, the people who vote, who actually go and vote, are old people. They're the people who vote. And everybody else, but they're the people who vote. Okay, full stop. Biden knows, he says something very important that that's why Trump's scared of him. The base of the Democratic Party is largely African-American and it's women. Black women vote up and down the ticket. You're Democrat, you gotta vote. That's the corner. The thing that Biden did here, which was brilliant, is that he talked to black males who Trump is talking to. Trump's won them. Trump's won a lot of black men. And he said to them basically, I know that Trump is telling you that white immigrants are taking your jobs. That's a lie. They'll cut right through that mustard and it'll bring that demographic around. And also the white males who are like, yeah, that's true. We're not hurting anybody. So he's playing a low game right now, but it's very subtle.
And there's presumably the Obama effect here as well, that Obama will come out hard for Biden.
I don't think he will.
You don't think he will?
No.
Really?
No. I would be surprised if Barack did anything in this election. I would be shocked. And you know, obviously I don't know him, but I'd be shocked if he showed up. It would do him no good to show up, and it does the Democrats no good.
Really?
Yes.
Because he came out for Hillary to no effect?
No,
and also
he didn't come out for
his
Hillary,
record
really.
is not that sensational
No.
that it makes all that much of a difference.
No, but he's a hate figure. So Barack knows, everybody in the Democratic Party knows who he's for. So he doesn't need to stand up there. No.
You don't think they're electoral assets at all?
No, it's not that they're electoral assets.
Well, they're not. you're saying.
People already know. Nobody else needs to know. If you come out, you're talking to the other side. And the other side, that's who Trump can use.
I just think, you know, here in London, Boris Johnson could be the prime minister here in this country in a few weeks' time.
Or tomorrow.
Or even tomorrow,
today,
technically.
Yeah.
And I very much foresee that happening with a second-term Trump, despite all the polling evidence that you're talking about, and despite the knowledge that you bring to this table.
I don't disagree.
I still think Trump gets it, and I think we enter a new era of American-UK relationship, which I think will be very interesting.
What about the argument that he's called, Trump has made hay, it's Trump's economy? Trump has basically claimed credit, wrong credit often, because there's been a growth in America that predates him. It was started in Obama. He's just seen a continuation of, but he's claimed it. He has owned it. He says that the stock market rises are down to him. He says high employment figures are down to him. If you look at some of the economic data around manufacturing, there's wobbling. The wobbling isn't going to take place in 2019. The wobbling is going to take place in 2020. If he builds himself, maybe the power of assertion actually means it doesn't matter. But if that economy, which he has owned, he's kind of branded, he's put his face on it, if that wobbles in the first half of 2020, does that not cause a
But, you know, the other thing is people don't actually like this guy. See, and you have to understand, for Americans, there is a likability factor. Americans don't like Donald Trump. In fact, a lot of them are ashamed of him. And so partly the numbers reflect people's feelings. You know, he's more likely to be reelected than not because he does have the incumbent
But Tim
advantage.
on Facebook makes a very good point here. Laugh as you like, the Trump syndrome is so strong that you forget the 2016 polls. The polls leading up to the election were also suggesting that he would lose. So why are we relying on polls?
But those polls did have a factor. We didn't pay attention to them. I mean, it was what I was saying about hurting. People didn't pay attention to the little factor that said Trump could sneak through. He only needed 87,000 votes. He only needed 87,000 votes to win the Electoral College. He did an Electoral College strategy, and that's how he won. And that's what he's trying to do now, is the Electoral College strategy.
The basic strength of Donald Trump has not diminished in any way, which is he talks directly to his base. He says what they want to hear. He demonstrates in some way economically that protectionism and nationalism is successful for them in the short term.
George,
and it sort of doesn't matter if the economy post-re-election
George, how did those
wobbles.
seats flip then in 2018? How did those seats
Midterms, I think the midterms are a very, very interesting observation point where you say, actually, how this is going wrong for this guy. But I think you will find that on the election proper, he will get back into a campaigning mode that you've not
it's happening
seen
today. It's happening tonight.
He could lose his
Bonnie,
Senate.
in Orlando.
Yeah.
And here's an assertion for you via Twitter, your favourite thing.
Yes, I love
a Trump
Twitter.
assertion on Twitter.
What does he say?
A big rally tomorrow night, he said this last night, in Orlando, Florida, looks to be setting records. We're building large movie screens outside to take care of everybody. Over 100,000 requests. Our country's doing great, far beyond what the haters and losers thought possible, and it'll only get better.
Bonnie, are you a hater?
Yes,
No,
she is.
I don't hate Donald Trump. Look, I've known Donald Trump for 30 years. You guys are just learning
He would
about him.
describe you as a hater.
Well, he would describe me as a hater because I've got more hair than he does. He's somebody.
I say that to George.
You know,
That's really insensitive.
Yeah. Poor George is sitting there.
Poor George.
George is fabulous.
I'm the loser.
George is fabulous looking. If my hair looked like that. So, no, Trump is a salesman, and you're right. Trump is a salesman. He could sell water out of a faucet because that's what he used to do. So he knows actually.
Is that true, though?
Oh, yeah.
He didn't make any money doing it.
He totally made tons of money. He had to pay taxes, which he didn't do. Trump tells you, I'm the biggest thing on the block. You're nothing. I'm going to keep pounding this to you. The media finally goes, oh, my God, it must be Trump. And then Trump slides through this little tiny passageway he's got. It's this big. He's got 87,000 votes. He will only be in Florida, Georgia,
so if it's
Pennsylvania,
that hard
Iowa.
for him to get through, why can't the Democrats come forward with somebody who sweeps this awful man out of
You know, the thing is, for
I think they
Joe,
might be still.
Sorry.
No, so I think they might do. Because I think if you look at the midterms, if you look at places where he has to do really well, there isn't, in the last year...
He's not going to lie to wedge. He's not going to lie.
So that's the worry. I mean, from his point of view, the reason he's firing pollsters is because that must worry him. Because he's pulled a trick off once where everyone misjudged him. Everyone overlooked the key data where he was fighting. That is not going to happen a second time. And just as everyone was very trendily saying Hillary Clinton's going to win, everyone very trendily next year will say, of course, Donald Trump will win. So he could be bitten by the same thing that he won.
Bitten by Biden.
But not only, but that's very good. And not only, because that's what you do. That's excellent.
He did that for a while.
It really is excellent. I'm going to pass it on. Not only did everyone say Hillary was going to win, so did Donald Trump. Donald Trump prepared for a Hillary Clinton presidency. He was staying there looking at the board, because I saw it live before I collapsed in utter horror, where he's standing there with his mouth open. He can't believe it. So now he weaves a narrative as if it was inevitable. He knows that's a lie.
And
that's
that must worry him.
Of course it worries him. This guy's got an excellent sense of smell. He knows there's a trouble out there. Right?
I sense
really
a break coming up. We're going to be back in just a moment. I can hear a break shout in my ear.
Normalisation of Donald Trump is one of the phenomena of our age.
But
it's absolutely extraordinary that you can read that tweet out and we'll go, you're a hater or a loser.
Totally.
You think,
But also,
the president of the USA.
I mean, where is it? Because for me, I think what he does is quite simple. All he's doing is saying it's going to be a big rally with 100,000 people. So when we say there was only 20,000 people, he's saying that's fake news. It's a very simple process.
And actually,
so setting up his next...
And 100,000 people don't matter in the great thing.
No.
It's like saying, it happens in Brexit as well. Here is a giant rally of people in one small area from which we'll extrapolate the fact that the whole country thinks one thing or another. But that's obviously a false distinction.
But you know, Stig, what he loves, and I think George might agree with me, Trump has outed the fact that most people don't like to be in the loser camp. Whatever you think, you don't want to be a loser. So Trump puts winners and losers, and he plays winners and losers. And a lot of people are with Trump because they think he's going to win. That actually propels Trump's advantage in winning when you believe somebody.
We saw this with Blair in 1997.
Exactly.
There was that much of the country was going to vote Blair, and it became, you want to be on this bandwagon.
That's
folks.
right. It's
you
a
bandwagon,
baby. Same with Boris. There's a momentum when people realize there's a momentum. Are you going to be the loser? Are you going to be a winner? Jump on the bandwagon. Clean it up later.
Even if you're
once
embarrassed
you get
by
on.
it.
We're asking what Donald Trump's biggest obstacles are as he goes into his re-election campaign. We're expecting him to announce it tonight. Jamie says, if it was for Clinton to call Trump fans deplorable, why is it okay for him to call people haters and losers? Irene says, enough decent Americans vote against him, then he'll lose. His base can't save him this time, but, you know, you can't really predict these things before they've happened. On foreign policy, the big sort of issue right now, outlined by Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan, 1,000 new US troops to the Middle East to counter a hostile threat from Iran. Pretty much the whole world not supporting the US on this sort of activity around Iran.
I think there's two areas where you can... Trump has no strategy. One of the many things that are wrong with how our world works is we have lots of intelligent people postulating about what Trump's strategy ever is. He doesn't have a strategy.
He doesn't have one.
He's angry about the Iran deal because Obama signed it. He doesn't care other than the fact that he wants to seem strong. So there is a possibility, a frightening possibility, that in order to get elected in 2020, he could take America perilously close to...
He doesn't want a war. Would you argue he wants a war?
I would argue he wants to seem virile and tough.
Thank you.
And that may not be a full-blown war, but it will be something. The other area where you look at it is Venezuela as well. You can see how he's triangulating around Venezuela. He wants socialism to equal the abuses that are going on in Venezuela. So when a left-wing candidate potentially or otherwise comes out of the Democrat Party, he can say, socialism, think Venezuela.
And that's why it's not going to happen. And Trump wants to be seen as the King Kong of the world, okay? And we are supposed to bow down to the inevitable, the utterly inevitable. And a lot of people like bowing down to the inevitable. They don't want to work too much. They don't want to
but a lot of people also, Bonnie, like being the King Kong.
They do.
They like America being great again.
They love it. They love it.
And I'm confused on the foreign policy Iran situation because I think that there's evidence to suggest that one of the reasons Trump is doing okay right now, better than you might suspect, is precisely because he hasn't been involved in a military operation. And I don't think Americans particularly want American troops. So I think sending 1,000 troops out there is not necessarily in line with the narrative of somebody who
he's
wants
done
to
enough. What I think is interesting about him, he's never, like you say, he's not declared war. He's not led Americans perilous.
He's not made a huge amount of the 1,000 troops either.
No, but he's done things like there was this airstrike in Syria. It didn't lead him embroiled into a Syrian conflict, but it was an act of virility. It was an act of showing he's prepared to talk
And that's
tough.
what it's about.
The same thing as North Korea. He hasn't actually changed anything in North Korea. He's not achieved anything. He's just swaggered enough that he can claim something. And that, to me...
Well, that's statesmanship. I mean, that is proper statecraft. That's how you do your business.
Look, we're using the language or the terms of virility as a foundation for our politics. We have basically got guys, and we got one here in the shape of Boris Johnson, who are like, I would do what I want to do, and I won't show up.
I think that's unfair on Boris. I think that's unfair on Boris.
It is. I'm making it very basic, but basically, people are going for Boris because he says he's inevitable. I am inevitable, and I'm so inevitable that I actually don't have to show up on any hustings with anybody else. And the same with Trump. And there are people who like that.
Manspreading. It's basically geopolitical manspreading.
It's geopolitical manspreading. Very good.
Here's Trump on his prospects for re-election.
That's excellent. Gosh, you guys are...
Those debates should be very easy when we meet whoever we're going to meet. Because statistically, maybe, I don't know, who knows? Politics is a crazy world, but when you have the best employment numbers in history, when you have the best unemployment numbers in history, when you have the best economy probably that we've ever had, I don't know, how the hell do you lose this election, right? And actually, that's just the beginning.
And Sylvester on Facebook points out, I think, the point you were making, George, as appealing as liberal policies might be, I don't think the political left is organised enough actually to take him on.
And that's a significant problem. In elections, in the two-party system, it is critical as a candidate that you not only build up your own case and your own proposition, but that you have a bogeyman, a negative, something to knock down, something against which you are pitted. And that is very, very important. And currently, the left don't even appear to be out on the field.
If we go back to this, part of the problem is, who does represent the liberal left right now?
The left
so many
is not going to defeat Donald J. Trump. The left will not be the factor that will face Donald Trump because they can't beat him. It'll be the center or even further to the right. It's not going to be, nobody on the left is going to face Donald Trump.
Is this an act of negligence on the Democratic Party? Trump was elected, shocked the world in 2016. He's done what he said he was going to do. He's been what we thought he was going to be. The election next year is not a surprise. We knew it was coming. It happens every 4 years. Why in the hell, if you are a party that wants to take back power of this man you feel to be a danger, why have you let this situation?
Well, you are right. It is definitely an act of negligence, but I've seen it before. I saw it in the UK with the Conservative Party after 1997 when Tony Blair swept into power. The party that he beat was so devastated. The Democrats would be so rocked by the impossibility of this man taking this office that it's very hard to regather, to reconcentrate, to refocus, and you need a leader figure.
You're not disappointed by it. 2019, they don't have
Look, the other point was Hillary Clinton barely lost. She won. She barely did. So people are recovering, let's put it this way. This also reflects the base of the Democratic Party. These are the conversations in the Democratic Party. The person who leads the Democratic Party is Nancy Pelosi. There are some really big heavyweights. They're letting this happen. Why not? Why shouldn't it happen? Why should anybody be crowned? But if you lose the South, which is what Bernie Sanders did, and he lose it again, then the person who comes out of the South faces him, and Joe Biden wins if he has a woman of color on his ticket.
Yeah. And also, just from a question of equality point of view, it cannot be that in 2020, two white 70-year-old men are fighting for the most powerful office in the world.
If he has a woman of color on his ticket in his 40s, Joe wins this.
So is the Democratic Party sensible enough to do that?
We'll see.
We'll see. On Facebook, when we talk about these obstacles that Trump might face, Luis says, Mr. Trump will be president in 2020. Feli says, how much will the trade war affect American wallets is a crucial question. Yeah. And Sam says, Trump will win. Elections aren't determined by politics, but by the people of the USA.
Well,
you're the only one represented here.
Well,
we're going to blame you, Bonnie.
You know, I'm interested in the polling numbers, and George is absolutely right. This is so early to even be talking about them, but it's still fascinating. He has had the worst polling numbers of any president since this began, consistently. And so that's fascinating to me. I don't know what it means, but we'll see. I mean, he's obviously panicked about it, so it's very interesting.
Listen to the debate again. Go to Apple Podcasts, look up CNN Talk, and thank you for watching and contributing today.